I call this meeting to order. It begins now for the annual meeting portion of the Arrowhead High School annual meeting. And if everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank you all for being here. And as a reminder, annual meetings actually require a vote for the chair of the meeting, unlike all of our other board meetings. So I am just functioning in a temporary capacity at this point in the meeting. Before we begin the meeting, I would like to offer a few introductions and recognitions. I'll start with the board. It's been a very, very rigorous and busy last 12 months. Our board has met on many, many occasions to work through what started as a full facility assessment of all of the Arrowhead buildings and grounds. That led to a long-term plan that we put in place for the high school. And that then led to the referendum questions that you will now see on the November 5th ballot as we go to vote. So our board has been exceptionally busy, very deliberative, actively involved. And I want to just give them credit for all of their time and commitment, in particular over the last year. So I'm going to ask our board members to introduce themselves, state their name and the seat that they serve on. And then if they also are a part of any official capacity on the board, if you can identify yourself in that way as well. Are all of our board members mic'd up? We'll start with Member Wood.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's so amazing to see all of your faces. My name is Lindsay Wood. I represent the North Lake seat, and I serve on the Personnel, Finance, and Legislator and Finance Committee. So thank you. Thank you again for coming.
Good evening. My name is Daryl Beneker, and I'm the chief for Lake Country. I've been on the board for 7 years. Capacity that I serve, I lead the Buildings and Grounds Committee, members of the Personnel Committee, as well as Finance and Legislation. Thank you for coming.
Hello, everyone. Brandon Miller. I represent the Richmond seat. I hold the treasurer seat as well. I'm also the chair of the Finance Committee. I also sit on the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Thanks for coming. Appreciate seeing you all here.
Hello, my name is Chris Ferris. I represent the at-large seat. I am the vice president of the board, and I also am the chairperson for the policy committees. Thanks a lot.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Hemmer. Thank you all for coming. I represent the Merton seat. I am the clerk of the board, and I also chair the curriculum committee.
Hi, I'm Tim Langer, representative of the Stone Bank area, and I'm the chair of the First.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. My name is Ann Angeli. I hold the second at-large seat. I am also on the Finance and Legislation Committee, the Curriculum Committee, and the Personnel. Thank you so much for being here.
Good evening. My name is Chris Adsit. I represent the Heartland Lakeside seat. I am a newbie. I've been here a whopping 1 week. Thank you to the board for bringing me on. I'm happy to serve. I sit on both the Finance, Legislation, and Building and Grounds. I look forward to serving you. And truly, like every other member has said, thank you for coming. It is very important that you're here. We respect your opinions, and we really appreciate your interest in the district. So thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. I also want to recognize this evening soon to be introduced, our new superintendent of last August, Conrad Farner. Superintendent Farner came on and to suggest that his onboarding at Arrowhead has been any less than a sprint would be completely out of line. He has really worked hard to come up to speed. Has worked hard to prioritize the needs of the school, both our challenges and our opportunities, and to work with our board in putting together what I think is developing to be a very kind of laser-focused plan for our future. So we thank him, as well as a very fine administrative team that he surrounds himself with. Many of them are here tonight. They're often here. They not only work day to day in all of the day-to-day operations and managing the kids at the school, but given the referendum at hand, many have been involved in both the implementation as well as the planning for all of the information sessions, so that we have an informed public that goes to vote in November. Last but not least, I also want to call out in particular Jeff Gross, our Director of Business Services. Our board interacts with Jeff quite a bit, and we all know the quality of his work, and we know the value that he brings to our school. So it really is a pleasure this evening for all of you to be here to see what he does day to day in developing and implementing our budget. Lastly, I'll give a kudo to Kate McGraw, who works with both our administration and our board administratively, and really keeps us on track. So thank you, Kate. Our first order of business this evening is then to elect a chairperson for the meeting moving forward. The person so elected may or may not be a member of the school board. If the meeting is adjourned to another date, the same person will preside. If you make a nomination, please state your name so it can be properly included in the minutes. And just as a reminder, only residents of the Arrowhead School District are allowed to vote. So I will at this time entertain nominations for chair of the meeting this evening.
My name is Chris Ferris, and I would like to nominate Madam President Schuler to chair the meeting this evening.
I'll second. Chris Adson.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for a raise of hands for a vote on that motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. So we will start this evening and get things underway with our treasurer's report. I'll turn it over to Member Miller.
Thank you. For anybody that would like to follow along, it's on page 14. I'll take you through the high-level summary of the unaudited treasury. This will actually be audited at the end of the year. And you can reference that on the school website upon completion of that audit. So high-level summary. We'd be looking at a beginning fund equity on July 1st of $16,755,598. With total receipts being $35,595,982. And then the disbursements totaling $34,882,983, which leaves us an ending fund equity on June 30th of $17,468,596. Does anybody have any questions about the treasurer's report? Yeah. Got anything to add? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. With that, we will launch into the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We're having some interesting microphone issues. You can hear me in the back. Okay. I'm going to apologize, first of all. Many of my slides are going to repeat Jeff's slides. He has to do his thing for the budget hearing, and we also are using the referendum slides. To pull out of either one of ours would have really created a kind of disjointed, and it wouldn't make sense, but I promise I will click super fast to get through everything. And Kim, I have a whole thing about the history that you did too, so I'll really be clicking fast. I know some people would like to get to the tour after this, so we'll definitely move as fast as possible so people can get to that tour. And we'll also be happy to answer questions if people have questions. I'm doing a little weird combination of what traditionally would be presented at the annual meeting, but I'm also not doing very much of what's normally presented in an annual meeting so I can get to the referendum stuff. I do think it's important for people to know that we have saved millions of dollars in reductions over the years to be fiscally responsible and to meet our budget and to stay within those revenue limits that Jeff described. We do have that Moody's rating of AA1, which is better than 90% of the districts in the state. And our property tax bill has been decreasing, as Jeff talked about. The thing I want to emphasize this evening is how Arrowhead students and staff are just unbelievably committed, part of this community, just doing amazing things every single year. And I don't know how many people realize that, so I want to take this opportunity to make sure you do know that. We have a Health Occupation Students of America group, HOSA, and our Student Senate. They do multiple blood drives and actually are helping save lives locally and across the country. We had over 300 pints of blood, translates to 900 lives saved just from our Student Senate blood drives. Our Student Senate has a Giving Tree program where they actually work with Waukesha County. They provided holiday gifts to 3 families and 10 children and raised $1,500 in gift cards, also to help families in need. Our Warhawk Interact Book Fair was a pretty amazing event itself. Thousands of books that were accumulated, solicited, got their donations, and 300 people then participated back in May to be able to select free books. And Feeding America football food drive just happened a few weeks ago where Arrowhead beat Oconomowoc. Pretty amazing numbers, 9,162 meals that Arrowhead raised to Oconomowoc's 8,930, so it was close. I think this is our 3rd year in a row at least that we've prevailed, but just what a neat thing to be able to provide those kinds of meals for that many families. Our girls swim team, unbelievable what they've been doing over the years. Over 8,500 items they collected for the Heartland Food Pantry and $10,000 for Make-A-Wish. And there's a picture of them there. Additional groups between the Student Senate, Warhawk Interact, Girls Golf, Hockey, Boys Swim, all of these groups have been doing this kind of thing for years, giving back to the Arrowhead community. When you look at the volunteer hours our students are doing, there's over 130 projects that our students have been a part of, and that's over 10,000 hours in just 1 year. That includes hosting free events for veterans, collecting toiletries for homeless vets, volunteering with youth, volunteering with seniors, and we've raised $114,000 in the golf tournament last year for the MAC Fund, which brought their total to over $1 million that they've raised through that event. So that is some pretty remarkable things our students and staff are doing for the Arrowhead community. There's a lot more that I usually would get into with this. Our athletic teams continue to be amazing. We have state champion teams, runner-up teams, conference champions, every year. Our performing arts program is unbelievable. Cinderella is currently part of the production. If you haven't got a ticket, definitely go and see that. I think this week even, and next week. Amazing what our music program does and our theater program does. We got the Tech Ed Department of the Year last year, so that's quite an honor, and the work they do with our community is amazing, and the opportunities they're giving our kids are amazing. So check out our website, read the advisors, read any newsletters that we send out, and you can keep up with what's going on here. Bottom line, our staff and our students really make this high school an incredible asset for our community. So now I'm jumping into the referendum stuff. I have to give credit to Jeff and Adam, Jeff Gross, Director of Business Services that you heard already, Adam Kurth, our high school principal sitting over there. They helped develop this. They're not going to speak tonight like they usually do because I'm going to run through it as fast as humanly possible so people can keep moving. But we do want to make sure people have this opportunity here. The big question people ask about a referendum is why? What are you doing? Why do you have to do that? And there's really 5 big reasons why. First one is safety. You would never in this day and age design a high school where you've got 1,000 kids at one building and then 3/4 of a mile away, you got 1,000 kids in another building. It couldn't be less safe. The walk back and forth every day when you've got so many kids and staff going back and forth just out in the open, no other school does that. And I'm sure back in the 70s, different era, different time, that what they didn't have the concerns back then that we have today, but that is a huge issue. The other problem with our security is because we have two big flat ranch buildings, we've got like quadruple the number of entry points that any other high school has. And so every door is an opportunity for something bad to happen because it doesn't take much to prop open a door. And so when you have so many of those doors that you have to worry about, we're definitely at a disadvantage compared to other districts where if you have one building, 2-3 stories high, you can cut the number of entry points by literally probably a fourth of what we have in our setup here. And the way these buildings are simply designed is not the way modern buildings are designed. Modern buildings have the ability to lock sections down. If you have an intruder, if you have something going on, you can actually hit a button, make it safe, get automatic calls out to emergency. So many more things that you can do when you've got modern facilities. So that's our top priority and our top reason why we're here. Second reason we're here is our facilities are simply old. Some people want to say a 50-year-old building, 77-year-old building, 75-year-old building isn't that big a deal and it should last forever. I guess if you look at the tour, if you come through and look at the buildings, you'll have to make that decision. Our community is going to have to decide. You can see how they're used. Like this gym is used till 10 o'clock at night, every single night, almost all year long. Same up at North. This room, the cafeterias are used for student activities. We had to push the cheerleaders out of here tonight so that we could get this thing set up. Classrooms are used by other organizations well into the evening. 2,000 students running through these buildings is not the same as just building a home and living in a home for 70 years. The wear and tear is extreme. It's excessive. I would also argue the way buildings were built in the 50s and the 70s, not necessarily built for the long haul. These are not those beautiful stone buildings that you see in Wauwatosa and other communities where they have these things that obviously are going to last 100 years. That's not how these were constructed. So we just have really old buildings and they don't stack up with what other schools districts have, and they aren't meeting our needs educationally in this day and age with how much learning has changed. So those are the dates. 55 is when South was built, 69 is when North was built, and 99 there was some added on classrooms to North. Didn't do anything to actually improve learning, didn't do anything to improve security, just added rooms because enrollment was growing and they needed more classrooms. And the way they built it guaranteed that even more classrooms would not have any natural light at North because they just kept putting them around the outside. The other reason we're here is our school funding system literally requires referendum. The way schools are funded, you can never do a big capital project without going to the community and asking for the money. That's always been that way. It's just how it works. The citizens get to decide what do they want their schools to look like. The operational side has been something that's been growing and increasing over time, going back to what Jeff said about the revenue limit. Everybody in the state is having to do this. Over 80% of the districts have gone to operational referendum since 2000. There's no way 80% of the districts in the state are mismanaging their funds. That's just ridiculous. It is a state funding mechanism. It's how it works. Districts have to go to their community to get the funds they need, and we'll show you why that's true in a few slides. Another big reason we're here is we just want better learning opportunities for our students, which translates to better outcomes. Arrowhead is still a very good district. We're still a high achieving district, but we have been seeing a little bit of a dip over the last few years. We're not as high as we used to be. And we want to get that. We're going to fix that and change that, but we would like our facilities to match what other districts are using and have facilities that are comparable to what other students are seeing. And finally, it's about the taxpayers getting the most return on the investment, the best use of tax dollars. We've easily estimated $1 million in redundant costs that taxpayers are paying every year because we're maintaining 2 buildings. I'll say that again, $1 million of taxpayer dollars just because we have 2 buildings. Because of all the equipment, all the staff, all the things that go with having 2 different facilities, all the inefficiencies for heating, electricity, all of that stuff. It's about $1 million a year. And as a taxpayer, I don't know how you justify 2 buildings with the safety risk, security risk, and that kind of expense. It does not make sense to me. So I'm going to go through these really fast because people can go on the tour and see that. But if you look at our parking lots, you can see we keep our grounds clean, we keep them safe, but they are getting old, they're crumbling. It costs more and more money every year to fix this sort of thing, and replacing asphalt is not an easy thing to do. This is the gym, the ceiling of the gym on the left side. This is the gym right over here that this is a picture of. If you go around the whole thing, you'll see all the deterioration at the top of the ceiling. It's just old. There are places where we've tried to patch it up. It gets to a certain point where you can't patch it up against something stable without doing even a bigger replacement project. And we simply don't have the funding to maintain the buildings like we would if the state limits hadn't been put in place and if they had been at least keeping up with inflation. And it's just a super old gym. This thing was built in the 50s. Our pool on the left, that's underneath the pool. All that water on the ground is supposed to be in the pool. It's 50+ years old. It has outlived its usefulness. Our B&G buildings and ground staff have done a great job keeping that thing going all these years. It's been a great return for the taxpayers, but it's simply running out of time. And every time you try to repair an old pool, it just is a huge expense and it just gets more and more expensive. The board has said if it's anything that's over $100,000, they're not going to keep putting good money into something that old that's just going to keep requiring more and more repair. Locker room example on the far right corner there, that's what most of our locker rooms look like. We have 2 locker rooms that look really nice. They were donated. They were not taxpayer dollars. So anybody that tries to say that was a bad use of tax dollars, that's wrong. Again, they're 70, 50-year-old facilities. They look like it, they smell like it, and they're deteriorating. And this is what people who come to Arrowhead see. Visiting teams, officials, this is what they get to use. That's how it looks. That's the impressions they get of Arrowhead. And then our HVAC systems and our electrical systems, these are just dying. We had 5 of these die in just the over a year that I've been here. That's like $30,000 to $50,000 for these things to get them replaced. We try to repair them if we can, but again, there's that dilemma. If you put 10,000 into it and it breaks down again in a month and now you got to pay 20,000, should you have just spent 30 right off the bat or the 40 to get a new one? We're constantly dealing with that battle. You would not use these in a modern building. You don't use these rooftop systems spread all over these 2 huge buildings. That's one of the most inefficient and ineffective ways to heat and cool a building. A whole different model would be used in this day and age for modern facilities. And again, the savings for taxpayers is significant when you have much more energy efficient buildings. So I mentioned the 2 locker rooms. These are the other misconceptions that people have out there. And it's really unfortunate for us because the things that people see, the most visible things that look really good and give people the false impression that our facilities are just fine, they're all donated. These are not taxpayer things. So the football stadium and scoreboard, the hockey rink, and those 2 locker rooms were all donated. Those are not a misuse of taxpayer dollars. So anytime you can fight that misconception, it's appreciated. So the other reason we're here is referendum is how it works. And the proof behind that, we start with this little slide. It's that dart is there because it is kind of a random, arbitrary thing that the state legislature did over 30 years ago. Jeff mentioned that revenue limit. I'm just going to harp on it a little bit more because I was actually an administrator when that law got passed. I vividly remember it in 92, 93. Before that, the school boards could set their levy. The school board could decide as a local government entity elected by the citizens, they could determine what they needed to tax to run the district. It was only as of that year that the state legislature came in and said, no, 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 we only like local control when it applies to us in Madison. We don't believe in local control for school boards. We're going to take the control away from you and put a limit on what you can have. And so they just did that out of the blue that year. They didn't warn us. They didn't tell us it was coming. We didn't have a chance to prepare or do anything differently with our spending. And so you just got stuck wherever you were. And as Jeff mentioned, if you happen to be overtaxing that year because you were doing some big project or you're doing some building and the school board had something big going on, so you were overtaxing more than you normally did, you've been rewarded for 3 decades. If you were a district like Arrowhead that was just taxing the normal, just what you needed, being frugal, you've been punished for 3 decades. And that's what's contributed to this incredible disparity in the revenue between districts. These are facts. This stuff can all be proven. Go to the DPI website. You can see the statistics. We'll show you. We'll walk you through them. We pull all of our data from the site. This is all real stuff. So anybody that tries to say other things or counter with other misinformation, please be skeptical. Because everything on our slides, I can back it up and show it to you and prove it to you right from the Department of Public Instruction. So these limits were put in place, limit on the revenue called the cap or the revenue limit. I already said most of this, set in 92, 93. It was supposed to be 2 years and then they made it permanent. And so that's, again, was just part of the weirdness of this law. When they first passed it, we were all saying, all right, 2 years, we'll figure it out, we'll suck it up, we'll be okay, we can make adjustments, 2 years won't be the end of the world. And then bam, they said now they're always going to be there. And everybody's looking at us saying, well, this doesn't work. How are we going to make this work? And the way we made it work is you made cuts every single year. Or you went to referendum from your community to say, can you give us the funds that we need? And so it's been a 30-year thing, which I know it sounds weird, it sounds hard to believe, but it is actually the law and it's actually impacting us. So when they passed that law, they rewarded higher taxing districts, punished the ones that were being frugal, but at least they were keeping up with inflation. The original law said, we will give you an inflationary increase so you can at least keep up with those costs. But then in 2008, 2009, they said, oh, guess what? We're not going to keep up with inflation anymore. And so those 2 lines that you see there, that steady one on the top, that's just the inflationary increase. That's what the number would have been if the law wasn't changed and they just stuck to what they said they were going to do, which was give us inflationary increases. By not doing that, you can see the blue line below, we are $3,380 below what we should be getting per pupil. If you multiply that by 2,000, I think it's $6,700,000 that we should have been getting under the law when it was originally passed before they changed it and said, now we're not going to give you inflationary increases. Again, this is a fact. These numbers are real. This is what happened. So Arrowhead was low revenue in the first place because they were taxing appropriately when the limit got put in place, and then it got made even worse by not keeping up with inflation. $6.7 million a year. Just, we have to figure out how to make that meet. What can we cut, or else how can we raise revenue other ways so we can still offer the same programs and services? So Jeff touched on this slide. I'm just going to touch on it really fast again. This just shows you the revenue limit comparison. Arrow is at the bottom. Look at where Kettle Moraine, Elmbrook, New Berlin, the Falls are. Significant difference. And again, we're the only one on this list that's a K or just a high school district. So our costs are always higher than when you're a K-12 district, because the elementaries and middle schools do not have the same expenses that a high school has. The compares to the union high schools, again, way at the bottom. The number between us and Nicolet is staggering to me. $10 million a year different on the revenue limit, like that's mind-boggling to me. And they're smaller than we are. And they're passing referendums. So it's like Arrowhead kids, I'm not sure, they didn't do anything to deserve this or not deserve this, but this is pretty bizarre when you imagine this is how the state handles the revenue that they give to the districts. So thanks to some people that have given us some feedback. Jeff looked at it, we looked at it. Some people said, okay, well, that's the revenue side. That's what the state gives you for revenue, but you're actually spending more than that. And yeah, because remember, the revenue was only 80% of the budget, Jeff said. The other 20%, we do generate revenue through open enrollment, through fees, through gate receipts, any interest earnings. So that makes up that other small 20% of the budget. So yeah, our overall spending per student is $15,000 a year. 365 districts spend more than we do. We are at the bottom in the state for our spending per pupil. 13%. We're at that bottom level. So there's nothing anybody can say that these are facts. These are accurate numbers. These are right off the DPI site. That little graphic on the far right, I know it's kind of hard to see everything so small, but that circle, that's where if you did line up all 420 districts, that's where Arrowhead is at the bottom. We're trying to just make that visual point. So there's nothing being done in Arrowhead that's ridiculous, crazy, inappropriate, mismanagement. Nothing could be more true. And again, we are a high school district only. So our numbers actually kind of inflated. Like we would be lower than that if you just could account for all what the high schools cost. And I was going to click on that and go to the actual link, but I'm not going to do that in the interest of time. Here's that same union high school comparison. So there's only 10 union high school districts in the state. Again, look at Arrowhead. We are the bottom. We are the cheapest. We are the least spending by $1,000 less per student when you compare us just to the other high school districts. Nicolet, $28,000 a year per student. Arrowhead, $15,000. These are the facts. These are real numbers. You cannot argue with them. How does that translate to the mill rate? As Jeff showed you, again, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but our mill rate has been cut in half since 2012-13, from $3.66 to $1.80. That is really good news for taxpayers. And again, comparing where we're at to Waukesha County districts, bottom. Again, bottom. Taxing at the bottom. Spending at the bottom. Revenue at the bottom. So we are one of the lowest funded, lowest spending, lowest taxing, and yet one of the high performing districts in the state. There's no other way to say it. These are facts. This is accurate information. So we're here because the state legislature has said, if you need more funds, go to your taxpayers. And that's what's happening across the state. Again, these are all from the DPI website. Any one of you can pull this same exact data. Over 80% of the districts in the state have already gone to operational referendum. That's 347 districts have asked 1,345 questions. Again, are they all mismanaging their budgets? Is it that bad? Are administrators and school boards across the state that ineffective and that bad that everybody's doing this because they're mismanaging funds? That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. When you see that the state has cut back on the funding, when you see what we're spending compared to everybody else in the state, the reason these districts are going to operational referendum is because that's the only way to get the funds. If they froze you where you were at 30 years ago and then they cut your increases for inflation, There's no other way. You have to find the revenue somewhere unless you think you can just cut yourself to excellence, which I don't know of any district that can actually pull that off, because the more you cut, the less people want to come and be a part of your district. And then your enrollment goes down, and then you lose more funding, and then you got to cut some more. I'll get to that spiral in a minute. In just the past 2 years, almost 60% of the districts have gone to operational referendum. And this November, almost a third of the districts in the state are doing it. There's only one reason they're doing it. It's because the state has not adequately funded school districts. It's that simple. We showed you the numbers. We explained it to you. That's real. So that was on the state level. This, I know you won't be able to see it, but I'll just explain it to you because it's so small. But these are the area districts in Southeast Wisconsin now. Just Southeast Wisconsin, 147 referendums has passed. All the districts with red arrows or blue arrows, those are our competitors. Those are high achieving districts or districts in the area. So this is, again, just showing you that this is how it works in Wisconsin now. If you need revenue, you have to go to referendum. And those two blue arrows, that's Sussex Hamilton and Kettle Moraine. Jeff mentioned it. They passed recurring referendums forever. Kettle Moraine, 7 million every single year forever they get now. And Sussex, 7.6 million every year forever. Those districts are contiguous to us. We are right next to them. We compete with them for staff and for students and families. They're going to have 7 million more every year that Arrowhead doesn't even, we can't even dream of that. And so what they're going to be able to do with that is have better salaries, better benefits, better programs, better facilities. And we're going to be competing. So the important thing about this slide is all the number of referendums, because none of the actual dollar amounts are adjusted for inflation. So when you see Pewaukee's got 5, Muskego Norway's got 5, Oconomowoc got 4, Kettle Moraine 4, Germantown 3, Cedarburg 4, Elmbrook 2, Franklin, McQuantico 4. I mean, the list, how many multiple referendums these districts around us have done? We've done one for 1.7 a year for 5 years. That's the only one we've passed. And that's where Arrowhead is on the far right side there. So why are we here? Not only are the facilities aging and failing, everyone around us is improving. So these are our closest competitors. So now we're just going right around this area, not the whole Southeast Wisconsin. This is a picture of Oconomowoc. We have nothing that remotely looks like this in our district. Oconomowoc has passed 2 referendums, Hamilton 2, Germantown 1, Pewaukee 2, Kettle Moraine 3. Closest competitors, they have revenue, they have funds, they have facilities that Arrowhead does not have. We are the second tier of districts around here now. Other districts near us, McQuantico, Muskego, Cedarburg, Nicolay, Mequon, Thiensville. This is a Kettle Moraine facility. That's, I believe, their cafeteria / study hall. So that's what they have, and this is what we have. And people may say nothing's wrong with this. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this. This works. People can study in here. When families come through, though, and tour, and they see this, and then they go there, guess where they're going? Adam Kerr, the principal, gave 12 tours last year to families that were considering districts. Not a single one came to Arrowhead. And it's because they look at these facilities and they don't want to come here when they see what the other districts are doing. When you lose resident enrollment, it hurts your budget, it hurts your programs, it hurts your performance. You want your district to be attractive. That's good for property values, that's good for attracting families, that's good for every aspect of the school's operations. The more students we have, the more resident students, the better the revenue, the better the programs. So here's another example. Our cafeteria on the left, that's Cedarburg's cafeteria on the right. So now you've seen 3 area districts and what their facilities look like compared to ours. I'll go quickly. Our theater on the left and Verona on the right. We can't even put a class of kids in our theater. It only holds like 440 students. Our classes are 500. So you can't even do a class meeting. You can't get one group in that theater. So it's like useless for us other than the plays and productions that are amazing students do put on. The problem, one of the many problems with that is because it's so small and it sells out immediately, our kids have to go like through 2 weeks of performances, you know, stressing themselves out because it's not big enough to just do a reasonable number of performances where you could be making a lot of revenue by having twice as many seats for every one of those performances. So Verona's got about 1,000 seats. Our proposal with the referendum would get us about 1,000 seats, so we could at least get 2 classes in there at one time. Here's another example of our learning. Our classrooms look like this on the left, just very traditional, 4 walls. Again, yep, you can learn in those. Arrowhead kids have been learning in those for years. I learned in classrooms like that. Most of you probably did. You can learn in those classrooms, absolutely. Other districts, however, are modernizing their learning environments. They're giving kids a chance to get up, to move around. to work on whiteboards that are in the hall and the teacher can see from the classroom. I can tell you I would have benefited from that as a student. I got a little bit antsy when I was in that seat for too many minutes. Being able to walk around, look and work with somebody else, have whiteboards available where the teacher can see the work. You can compare your work to somebody else in the class, work collaboratively. That's how learning takes place. That's how business is done. We want to be preparing our students for how business operates today, not how business might have been done in the 1950s or 70s. I mean, people collaborate today at work. You work with other people out in the workforce. You do need to be able to solve problems and work with a team. Our classrooms, you can barely put 2 desks together. And our swimming pool, again, it's almost a joke. Our swim programs are two of our best. Our boys girls swimming, like 2 of the best programs we have, if not the best. The most state championships, state champions. They do so much for the community. They have one of the worst pools in the area, 6 lanes. I don't know if you can even fit 200 people in there. It's falling apart. It's 55 years old, and we're barely keeping it together. Meanwhile, a district like DeForest has built a facility that they can host meets. We've been told by our swim people that you can make $20,000 to $30,000, $40,000 on a weekend when you host a swim meet because of all of the revenue that gets generated when people, plus for businesses, local businesses, if we could host things like that, they would benefit from people going and grabbing something to eat and getting a beverage during that weekend. Like there's so many positive things from having a facility like that for the community, and instead we have the one that's on its last legs. And then our gym facilities, I'll go just really fast. Our 3 are on the left. They're old. Our gym at North is a nice gym. It's certainly not in bad shape, but it's very small. It doesn't even come close to holding all of our students. We can't even get all our kids at a game. Our gym over here, the downstairs, the one in the basement, it's falling apart. It stinks. The floor's peeling up. It doesn't have any light whatsoever. It's just not good. And when you look at Germantown, Oconomowoc, Elkhorn, these kinds of facilities are what, again, attract families and are attracting residents and non-residents, whether it's open enrollment or regular enrollment. People want to be at schools that have these kinds of facilities. Those facilities also give us a chance to get our community into the building more. We can actually let senior citizens come in and use our facilities. We can actually come up with some kind of a rental program or other, like a gym membership so that the community could take advantage of having much nicer facilities. And we need more space because of this kind of stuff. We've got kids here till 10 o'clock at night. Feeder kids are coming in here to get practices and learn because there aren't enough facilities in the area. So we are busy. And then our biggest concern is security. Ours is on the left. What it should look like is on the right. Our security is minimum. Our doors are locked. Yes, we have them on timers and they lock, but when a disabled kid needs to get in the building, that door has to be open for 10 seconds. That's not a very secure situation because after our first layer of security, that's it. You get in the building, you can get anywhere in the building. We can't lock it down. There aren't more doors. New schools, you'll have 3 doors that lock. So they only get in the first level, then you can do a visual, check them out, decide now do we let them into the office area, still make sure everything's okay, then they get into the regular school. We can't do that in our facility. It's not designed to even do it retroactively. We went to Verona and we saw their system. They literally can hit a button in the case of an active shooter or an intruder, and they can lock down entire sections of the building all in one time so kids can get out if they deem that getting out is the safest way to go, and nobody can get further if they have made it to a certain point in that building. They design them with safety and security in mind so that you can have the most secure possible building. So this is what Verona looks like. It's a very good comparable for us because they're about the same size. There are a few, maybe a couple hundred students less than we have. The reason we include this side is really just to give people an understanding about inflation. We would want to do something very similar to this. In 2018, it was $185 million to build that. Fast forward with the 40% inflationary increases in construction costs, it would cost $250 million or more today. So that's very close to the number we're asking for with our $260 million. We actually wanted to be a little bit bigger than what they have because we do have more students, but this is just evidence that the inflation has been a nightmare. None of us could have predicted what was going to happen with inflation and construction costs. It's out of our control. The point we are trying to make to our citizens is it's not going to get better. So if you want to be the most cost effective and save the money and keep the taxes down as far as you can, do it now when it's the cheapest it'll be, because the longer you wait and the longer you put money into old buildings, the cost is going to catch up to you at some point, and it will be even more significant down the road. So as Kim mentioned, this has been over a year-long process. Last fall, we did a competitive bid process to get our architectural firm, EUA, and our construction firm, VJS, to do a facilities analysis. This was one of those things that cracks me up. If we can't do this, we're not experts in facilities analysis, we're not architects, we're not construction people. But if we didn't pay somebody to give us an idea of what they would cost, we'd get criticized for that. So we do pay people who are experts to do it, and we get criticized for that. So it's just kind of funny, like you can't win with some people, but the board did the right thing. They made it a competitive bid. We got great bids from these companies. They're well-respected companies. I've worked with the UA in the past. VGS has a number of citizens in the district, or residents in the district, with kids in the district, so they got some skin in the game. But it was a competitive bid, and they have been awesome for us throughout this process. They did the thorough analysis. They evaluated these properties. They came back with the numbers that we could use to tell our community what is it going to take to keep this facility going, or to do better if we want to get newer facilities. We had numerous community information sessions. I mean, a lot of community feedback. I had at least 4 or 5 different sessions where, just like this, people came in, talked, asked questions, got to see the reports, hear the data. We spent a lot of time getting feedback from the community throughout the fall and winter. Then last spring and winter, it kept on going, more information sessions. The board did tours, we had workshops, all the facility study information was shared, and they started talking about what would be the potential options to move forward. That led to the survey, because you never go out to referendum without surveying the community first. And so that was mailed last spring, and that determined the levels of support for the different options. So this has been a long process with a lot of community involvement. So the survey itself, here's what the results told us. There were 3 main options. The survey told us, without a doubt, our community said, we want people in one roof. We want our students and staff under one roof. That was very clear from the survey. So that support told us that it's one of these 3 options in, or how to get under one roof. So the first one was everything new, pool and auditorium, $261.2 million. It got 43.2% support. That's a weighted score. So the non-parents in the district, if people don't have kids, their votes got more weight than the ones who have parents in the system. And it came out to that 43.2% number. About 10% were undecided on that one. The middle option, $214 million, had 44.1% support. That was a new school without an auditorium and without a pool, and about 11% were undecided. And then the other option was $172 million to add on to North. So you'd still have one whole building and then build on a new wing, and that got 43.9% support with about 15% undecided. These are amazing numbers, because according to the School Perceptions, who does these surveys, you don't see results like this, where 3 different options with $90 million difference basically has the exact same support. They're all within 1 percentage point of each other, so that's statistically insignificant. We're going to hold off on questions to the end, thank you, because we want to be respectful for people on do tours, but we'll answer any questions people have at the end. So then additional survey results, super strong support for a pool, whether it would be new or renovated, also strong support for an auditorium at over half. The community did not support putting $153 million into 2 old buildings. That only had 37%. That was very clear that that was not something that the citizens said we should do. So these are the 2 questions then that the board settled on. The 1.9 million for 4 years is an operational question. That's 2 cents on the tax mill rate, or $2 per 100,000 of property value. And the second construction, question, $261.2 million, $1.91 mill rate, or $191 per 100,000 in property value. For what it's worth, just an interesting point, Wauwatosa School District is going to referendum for less than half of ours. It's $120 million they're asking, and their tax impact would be over $210. And so whether they are or not, the tax impact would be over $210, where our impact is under $200, and we're getting twice the amount in funds. So conceptually, people have asked what do we think it might look like. This is not anything that anybody should take a lot of stock in, and you can't really see it on this one, so I'll go to this one. I mean, the white, just so you know, the big white ones are the campuses. So the top one is north, bottom one is south. That's what the current footprint looks like. We could maybe build on the south part over those baseball diamonds, but right now the board preliminarily has looked at doing it more on the north campus. So you can see that orange C is just a rough idea. It could definitely tilt more. It could look a lot different. It will look different than that, but this just gives you an idea that because we're going to go up 2-3 stories, you don't need the same footprint. So we'll be able to pick up parking space. We'll be able to replace the fields. You get new soccer stadium, new soccer fields over on the right. You get lacrosse fields down on that south part. All the tennis courts would move over to be on the same side of the road by the football stadium. One of the really nice things about a layout like this is all the buses would come in on that left side, the far left side, and they would run in and run out, and we wouldn't be dealing with the buses and the drop off and dismissal time for any of you who have been through that and seen what that's like. So just conceptual, gives people a chance. So we've got the statistics or we have the links for these if people want to see the actual studies and read them. In the interest of time, I just combine these all in one slide. But for people who don't have kids in the school, there is a common sense thing to say, well, why should I support this? And the common sense part of it would be your property values are going to improve when you make an investment in a facility like this. And so these are some studies. We are not saying they're the end all be all. we're educators. These were done by economists. You know, there definitely is it's not like an area of study that's got tons of robust, research done on it.
That's one study that was for inner city schools.
Yep, and we're not saying these are perfect or anything. We're just saying these are the ones that we could find. These are, you can look at them, you can dismiss them if you want to dismiss them. Intuitively, logically, I think it'd be hard to imagine that you would make an investment in a school and have your property value go down. So these are just studies that you can check them out if you're interested. We can give you the links if you want to know more. And the advantages to a new facility, obviously our number one goal is security. We want better learning outcomes. Having the new building means no disruption to learning because the two schools will stay operational until the new one's finished. So there's no disruption. We don't have to worry about moving kids around or doing any transferring. Once the new one's ready, then we move them in and then we tear down the older ones. We'll have much greater community access, great return on the investment because you're going to have better operational efficiency, save that $1 million a year, much better energy efficiency, and there's never a more affordable time to build. So one of the questions that we just always ask ourselves is, do Arrowhead students deserve less than what other districts are providing? The community is going to decide. So we've got 2 more referendum sessions for people that do want to hear more and learn more. October 22nd and 28th, 6 o'clock in this cafeteria. And if you want to take a tour now, Adam Kurth, our principal, will meet where you want to meet, over in the back corner. Feel free to meet with him over there and he'll take people who want to go to a tour. Otherwise, we'll continue with the annual meeting, and at the end of that meeting, we'll be happy to answer questions about this presentation or any questions that people have. Yep, I'll bring it back. I'll bring it back when we finish. When the annual meeting gets finished. This isn't like a normal presentation. This is the annual meeting. So the regular ones are the next 2, but this is primarily the annual meeting. You can take a tour and come back. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep, we'll be here. Yep.
This is an annual meeting, and as such, we will hold to the agenda points. And next up on the agenda is not public discussion. But sir, we're going to carry on with our meeting right now.
We're giving the facts.
We welcome you
You
to
can have your own
stay.
meeting anytime you want to have a meeting. You can have a meeting, but this is the school board's meeting tonight. This is the annual meetings community. There's no propaganda. It's all facts. Every word's a fact. Then let's talk afterwards. Let's
So
talk afterwards.
next up, the next agenda.
You're interrupting, let the teacher say, oh.
Hey, John,
That's a very.
is your name John?
Just stop.
John there.
Yes.
John, let's stop being a bully. And I'm just wondering, hey, John, I'm curious. I know you haven't seen the facilities. I think it'd be a good opportunity for you to actually take a tour. Come on back and ask some questions when you're done. Take that tour.
Just keep quiet. You do your thing.
Thank you so much. So we'll continue with the next agenda item, which is per procedure. We're going to look to set the annual meeting date. Excuse me, gentlemen. We're going to look to set the annual meeting date. And at this time, I am looking for a motion to allow the school board to set the date and time for the 25-26 annual meeting between May 15th and October 31st of 2025. It's a range, and it allows us to set the date within that range of time. So I'm entertaining a motion at this time. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Next up on the agenda is old business, and at this time, we would entertain any questions regarding last year's operations and in general, any questions and discussion from the public. I would ask that you step up to the microphone so you can be heard, state your name, and address the board and administration. Thank you.
That refer to like capital questions?
Absolutely. Please, we'll entertain any questions at this time. Please.
Check and make sure. I don't think karaoke. It's not, no. Yeah, no. You hear me? Yep. Okay. Just a question is, what are the major capital projects? Because I glanced at the budget, it's about $500,000. What are those projects that are planned? It's not a big, very big capital project or capital budget. Sorry, my name is Marvin Figursky.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Oh,
Does he want, do you want to take this one?
Question was, what are the major capital projects for the upcoming year that included in the budget? There's some roofing, repairs and replacements. There is, a maintenance facility, work on that, and HVAC equipment upgrades and replacements, actually. Our HVAC equipment on the rooftops are between 25 and 32 years old, and we run into the issue when they break, is it a fix or a replace? When the cost is half of replacement, we end up replacing and using the fund balance to take care of that.
Are there any other questions?
Madam Chair, is the extent of the time for questions specific to business or accept the questions on record?
We would entertain any questions at this point. Is that okay with you, Roger?
I get out of here.
My name is John Merrick. Can you go back to the slides with the survey, please?
Big three.
So for the $214.5 million, you weighted that and you have 44.1% support. If you weight that the exact same way for those that are probably no and definitely no, that is 73.7% probably no and definitely no. If you weight it the same way, certainly. I've got the numbers right here. How can you shake your head?
That's never how they were.
Well, then your explanation is very poor because here's 214.5 million. Weighted average, wait a minute, weighted average is 44.1%. It's 33% of definitely yes and probably yes. If you go to definitely no and probably no, and you weight that the same way, it's 73.7% of no. We don't want this.
The non-parent
And if we do that with every single one of your referendum questions, for the 153 million, it's 69.12% no, compared with your 43% yes, and if we, or 37% yes. If you go to the 172 million, it's 63% no, compared to your 43% yes.
Yeah, the non-parent group is definitely less supportive than the
No,
other.
that is the entire group. That is your entire group. That is off of your survey on your website.
I'd have to see what you're talking about.
That's off of your
These
survey on your
numbers-
website. Pull it up.
Yeah.
Do you have
These
your
numbers-
website available?
I think
These numbers are accurate.
I think the weighting was based on whether or not you have a district. It wasn't based on yes or no vote.
No, that's incorrect. Please look at your
It's not
survey.
incorrect. I'm looking at it on my phone right now.
Okay, if you
So
look
the
at your
weighting, the
survey,
weighting was based on whether or not you have a student in the district. If you have a student in the district, your weight is actually lower because you're more likely to vote yes.
that's incorrect. Look at your survey and then check with your
Mr. Merrick,
surveyor.
what is your question?
I'm pointing out your inaccuracies.
No, these numbers are accurate.
I'm pointing out.
Oh, your numbers are
absolutely-
absolutely inaccurate.
Absolutely accurate.
I've got it right here.
I've got it there too. I've got it on the same papers. Those numbers came off the same sheet.
You're just a liar.
No, I would argue you are.
I have it in writing.
I do too. I have the same survey results, and these are the results taken from that survey.
Please, sir.
Craig Dillman, when would you envision the new,
I've been told.
Excuse me. Thank you, sir.
when would you envision that the new school would be built? Does the 4 years that you get with the first question get you to a point in which you can start on the new school? When is it envisioned that the new school would take place?
The architects gave us an estimate of, how long would it take for shovels to be in the ground, basically, for a new, if it passed?
Will the first question get you to a point in which you're constructing a new school?
What you said, architecture will take about a year, a little over a year for design? 18 months, and so November, a year after that, November, then December, January, February, March, April, May, so around May would be the construction, and then 3 years? 28, 29 school years when it would be ready, so this would probably be just about ending that at that time.
Okay, that would be the last.
Right.
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Ken Tragoda. I am in the district and I just had a couple of quick questions. The total cost of the $261 million referendum with interest is what?
We don't have that number, but we do know that the interest cost is calculated into the tax rate impact that we're telling the public.
Okay, but you're asking us to fund this. Shouldn't we have some type of number that's assumed? Because we're looking at projections with all of the other numbers that you've been giving us. I would think it's appropriate for you to at least provide us with an estimated interest payment that would go along with that principle of 261 million.
Yeah, I get those numbers. It's like I said, it's in the impact, the tax impact. So those numbers are already included in what we're asking or what we're saying the tax rate is going to be. But I'll get the actual numbers for you.
Great. Next question. We're all agreeing that there is an inequity with the current legislation and how money is allocated, right? I think that's really the crux of the issue. Of the board members that I'm looking at here, how many have reached out and met with legislators to try and resolve this question? And how many times have you done it? And what has the result been?
They won't meet and they won't change it.
I can share with you, about,
Wait a minute.
oh, thank you so much. In the past, I do know that our Director of Business Services has had ongoing contact as a representative of Arrowhead in meeting with both Senator Kapinga and in the past, Cindy Dupo. About 2 years ago, our board sat down with those same two legislators. During that session, it was abundantly clear that they had no intention of addressing the manner in which schools are state funded, and made it abundantly clear that our methodology in trying to move ahead with our budget and secure funds was directly through our community. They said referendums are the way to go. Ask your community, which is in fact what we're doing. In addition to that, I know that Jeff and a number of the other board members, including myself, were at the name of
The budget hearing.
yes, the state budget hearing, prepared statements, stood before our legislators, the entire budget committee, and appealed to them to no avail. So we have had ongoing and consistent contact with our legislators, and they won't do anything for us. Understand that within any legislator's district, there are going to be, as the slides showed earlier, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. We are the losers. Some of the other districts that the legislators represent may not want that state funding equation to change. And so the legislators themselves are torn in their representation of all districts. Does that answer your question, sir? Hi.
My name is Bill Knauss. I live in Florida, so I'm a Arrowhead parent. Of the 261 referendum, can you explain?
Please.
Thank you. Of the 261 for the referendum, can you explain what percentage of the spending is for actual academics, such as the class sizes or classrooms, lunch and study hall, as opposed to the percentage that's just for what seems to be athletics, such as the auditorium, but that's not athletic, but you know what I mean, the auditorium, the field house, whether it's for an indoor track and basketball courts, or a separate field house that has to have turf. You also list that there are outdoor athletic facilities, another weight room and wellness facility, the competition pool we discussed, as well as the deep dive well. Now there's a warming pool that's listed, outdoor gathering places and small theater space. Do you have that percentage of what the breakdown is on this cost? Like what's actually going to academics? And which is, I'm just gonna.
Sure.
Got a question for that.
There's no real breakdown on that because really 100% of it is for academics because our ed classes use the pool, they use the gyms, they use all those athletic spaces, and extracurriculars also use it, which is part of our overall program. So really it's all for academics. Many of the facilities can be used additionally outside the regular school day for this type of practice and other things, but it's all used by our regular curriculum.
And I guess as a follow-up. Right, but as a, do you have a breakdown for what the pool will cost? What does a warming pool cost?
Well, yeah.
What,
Yep.
do we need a turf? One moment, please. I'll give you a second.
Mhm.
Like the necessity to have a turf and what does that cost? And is a turf facility separate from a 4 basketball court facility? And then which one has the track? Like you see, I'm going, there's a large list and like even a warming pool that people weren't necessarily aware of. And now it's coming to light from both people that support and don't support the referendum. So having that clarity of what the cost is, because maybe you don't need that much. Maybe you don't need a warming pool. Because then it also leads to the question of how do you know you're going to get revenue from the community and outside sources to use these places? You can take a snapshot, you can guess. My kids all play sports that would use all these facilities, but what does that cost? In addition, the athletics department, I should say the activities office is already strapped with people, and they're amazing, let me say. But if we are going to open this up to outside community use, who's going to manage that and the costs associated with that? It just seems, it's a bit daunting now that we see some of the plans. And it'd be great if you could provide some clarity on those costs and how you're actually going to get revenue, and if that's a promise or just a guess. That's my only ask. So I don't think, if you have an answer now, that'd be great, but I'm not sure you're necessarily equipped just yet for that answer.
We can do
But
some of it.
okay.
There is no warming pool in this number. That's not part of this project. There's a list that we put out in one of our presentations that just said, if things would go really well during the design and the construction and you end up having some efficiencies and you're able to possibly do some extras or include some things that you were like wish list, that's where a warming pool was on that list, as well as the little theater, I think was the term they used, but those are not in this project. So those are not anything that's going to be funded. The pool number, Brian or Charlie, do you know the number for the pool? It was like 20 million? Okay, we'll get the specifics, but ballpark, it was around 20 million for the pool and the auditorium, I remember. They were close to each other. So those are pretty solid numbers out of that 261. And if you think of the difference between the 215 and the 261, the big difference is the pool and the auditorium. So that's the difference between those two asks. And then, yeah, there was a wish list of things. If you come to the next presentation, I think we'll have that slide back up there. I don't have it in this one today, but there was a number of things that anytime you go through a project like this, when you got good construction people and good architects, they try to do things as efficiently as they can, so that when you get to certain phases of the project, you could say, maybe we can do this. Do you want to do this, or would you rather do this? And that's what some of those kind of wish list ideas came up. But it all would be within the 261. Can't go over that number. 262, sorry.
Would the cost be less than the 261?
I mean, I suppose it could, but you would try to get every dollar into this facility that you could to have it be the best it can be. Yeah, I haven't heard of that.
But if you don't want to, if you want to be below budget, like, if we're running a business, if I want to stay below budget, wouldn't I shoot for that as opposed to taking as much as possible? Because you're spending other people's money. I get it's an investment community, whatever, but it's still you're spending other people's money.
That would definitely be something the board could consider at that point in the process.
You could or will, you know what I mean? Yeah. Will you consider it? Will you?
Because right now, we're working on a budget number. We've never constructed anything, budget number can be quite nice. So yeah, I would do that for sure. We don't need to spend it all.
How much less would you like to go?
I always have.
You know, we want it for free.
Yeah,
There we go. Is that enough? Yeah.
If we can get it for free.
Yeah. And then I guess back to, you can all hear me okay, right? To the legislative meetings and stuff, I get the time, but how are you ramping up your intensity to convince them?
We invited them a year ago. They were invited here to come and speak at Swallow.
Yeah.
Not one of them would show. Four or five were invited, not one would show. This has been going on for 30 years. I can tell you every district across the state has been trying to get their legislatures to listen for 30 years. They simply will not change it because they don't get elected because schools are funded. They get elected by keeping taxes down. And this current model has done great for taxes, and that's why they won't change it.
The other thing to note is multiple inequities, just like county, right? In terms of much is dispersed from the perspective, and we have the same issue just in Waukesha County overall with inequities as it relates to the legislature. They're not listening to their county executives in Waukesha, let alone any other county. So the fact that I agree, we've tried. I'm not going to say we're going to stop trying, but it's a loss. It's a waste of our time. Fortunately.
Do we get the breakdown, architects and building guys, of each item of what you are estimating the cost that you built this number with? Like, is there a time frame you can make that available? What's a reasonable time that you can make that, that they can publish it on the Arrowhead website so we can see it as constituents? I'm sorry? Okay, yeah, we appreciate it, just because. My bigger point, maybe we don't need everything.
Yes. Understood. And to your original question, the process works like this. We originally work with both the architect team and the construction team. We get kind of gross, if you will, understandings of what a school with a student size like ours would require, and how does it relate to other districts with a similar membership in their students.
Sorry.
And so we start out and we work off of that. And so as one of the slides showed earlier, we put up a big red blob that says, probably this is how the school is going to be configured. We don't have any of that yet. There would be a great deal more money at this point that we would have to turn over to architectural design. They would actually do specific configurations that would allocate specific amounts of space for both educational and, as you say, extracurricular space. That has not been specifically done yet. By design, it would require a lot more money. We're not willing as a board to invest that far at this point, not knowing that we have a referendum that's going to pass. So we will know a lot more of that, but we do have some basics that you know, the VJS team can supply.
So doesn't it make sense to get that information ahead of time before we vote on spending all this money? Because anytime I buy a house, if I'm going to invest in something or a car or even an iPhone, I do the homework and I know exactly what I'm getting before I commit the dollars that I'm going to put into it. It's a lot of money that you're asking.
It is. It agreed.
And it's
that's
more
and that's
than what's provided.
Well, but that's actually what we've done already. The number they came up with was after meeting with teachers, meeting with administrators,
I'm not
going
arguing
through the
that,
square feet.
But I
What do
don't
we
have
need?
their numbers.
I'm just letting you know, there's not like fluff built into this. This project will not be much less than this because we told them we don't want fancy. We want it good, we want it efficient, we want it effective.
Yeah.
And so they started with that in mind. So it's not like there's a bunch of stuff that you could say, oh, we don't need that, we don't need that. Yeah, and that was all part of the design to get to this number.
Well, we need those specifics.
We'll get
Looking
them.
back at it.
Sure.
Can I say
Other
something?
questions?
Please.
So Bill, just wanted to share one additional quick thought with you. It would be amazing if citizens in the state would have an uproar to the legislators stating, hey, we want it to be fair equity across the board. Arrowhead's getting $11,000 per kid. Milwaukee's getting 19,000 or 18,000 per kid, graduating a 9% literacy rate. Waste of money, doesn't make any sense. Let's just even the playing field. But you know what? We can't do that. We need everybody to do that. And the only way we can do it is if the whole state goes after their legislators and says, we want this to be a priority. If you guys want to be reelected, this has got to happen. This has got to change because there's a huge inequity in the funding model. And there's no reason the legislators, they have no fire under their feet and no reason to make that change. And so we can scream from the rooftops and go to as many meetings and as many legislative sessions. They're not going to listen. They're going to listen. They're not going to make a difference. It's not going to change it. So that's really what has to happen. If that happened, we'd have 6 to 7 million more per year. Boy, we'd be fine. So that's really the bottom line. I personally, this wasn't a unanimous decision. This was a hard decision, and there's lots of areas of gray in this board. I voted against this basically just because the percentage of the public wasn't 50% or greater. I was going to throw in my hat with, okay, I'm representing my constituents. This is what I'm going to vote for. If you guys say yes, we want it, no matter what I think, I'm voting with you. I decided that was where my line in the sand was. Every one of us had a real discussion, real struggles back and forth to try to make this the right thing. We want to do the best by our school. We want to do the best by our community. We don't even know if this is going to pass. And if it does, believe me, this board will put in place. We've already talked to Jeff about bringing somebody in to create the best efficiencies with this money, somebody that will have dollars and cents attached to his income to make sure that there's no waste that's going on here, that is going to find efficiencies if this does go through. So, and I will piggyback on Brandon and say, yes, if there's a way that we can find efficiencies and bring money back, I would also sign up for that.
Thank you, Member Ferris. And to that point, to your original point, in advance of the biennial budget being set this last go around, I can't tell you how many board meetings, meeting after meeting after meeting, one board member or another made an appeal to parents to please participate and be part of the legislative process. Talk with your legislators. Have them understand how this is impacting the high school that sits in your backyard. We did that again and again, not only at meetings, it was also sent in correspondence that went out to parents asking for their assistance. So when these things happen, as Member Ferris says, it takes a community to move our legislators into action. So we appreciate your becoming aware of the issues that we face and would appreciate your support with the legislators in addressing it in the future.
Can I say something, Madam President?
Please.
I just wanted to echo what Chris said. I was also a no vote for the specific reasons that Chris mentioned on the referendum. One thing I wanted to let you guys know about the inequity in the funding is what I heard back too was some of the representatives in Madison are afraid if they adjust that formula, the schools that are sitting pretty on the top will be affected. And they might not be sitting so pretty in order to bring up the rest of us who are on the bottom. So that translates into votes for legislators. And when I was contacting our legislators, Topanga and Duco, it was like talking to a brick wall. I must say Duco was a little more receptive, but Topanga, we just wasn't interested. So I just wanted to let you know that we have done our homework and we have been trying, and I think everyone on this board has made numerous attempts with our people in Madison. It's just not going anywhere.
Sir, did you have a question you'd like to?
Who gave you the number of 261.2 million? How was that derived? Where did it come from?
Architects and construction company.
And that's a guaranteed number 3 years out.
Can't go over it. That's including inflationary increases that they expect.
And, who's the primary construction company?
BJS, Ryan Raymond Schneider,
You've already paid EUA for evaluations, you paid for studies, paid for lots of things. How much was all that approximately?
So you might.
EOA did the facility study for 13,000. We had a bid as high as 140,000 on that. We also, BJS hasn't gotten anything yet. The survey company costs about 18,000. Do that community survey.
Perceptions, or who was that?
Let's go perceptions. Yeah.
That was 18,000.
Correct.
So, we don't have any specific allegiance to any one general contractor.
No, well, actually, we went through the bid process. Part of the bid process, we had 2 projects laid out for them to bid on. We had 5 companies bid. We interviewed 3 of them and ended up with BJS. So BJS will then go and bid everything out to subcontractors and make sure we're getting.
So are we gonna go get 1 or 2 more numbers from a general contractor to check the numbers of the primary that you've selected?
Not from other general contractors, because we've already done that.
Well, it's America, we're free, we can go somewhere else and validate a number to make sure 261.2 is legitimate.
I got what you're saying.
And it's not, and it's gonna hold.
Absolutely. Yes, we're working with an owner's rep that's looked at all these numbers and, you know, he's working for us.
So if you
He's
need
on our
big,
side.
big construction company names, I can come up with some that build healthcare facilities and schools, and there's more than 1 or 2 around here.
We sent this out to 10 or 11 different companies. Was it 5 or 7 submitted proposals? We interviewed the best, the top 3 proposals. They then provided us project scenarios of costs of each of those projects, so we could evaluate that. We had an owner's rep helping us through that piece of it. Someone who's been on the inside writing construction contracts for construction companies, so they could be on our side writing them in our favor.
And then there's the concept of value engineering.
Absolutely.
Give you the best value for the dollar.
Absolutely.
And take out all the warming pools and all the BS that probably shouldn't be there. Maybe that number can be driven down even further.
There's no warming pool in this.
And any luxuries that aren't in these 2 buildings right now that we're gonna add in later at the taxpayers' expense.
Right. There is no warming pool in this number.
Well, I don't care about a warming pool. I care about anything.
Right.
A flower garden that we don't have now, we don't need.
Yeah, like we already mentioned, a lot of this board members are committed to, making sure that doesn't happen, so. And just to give you a little background, the amount of time that was spent, engaging these construction firms, engaging the architect firms, the fact that we haven't had to pay these guys nearly as much as what we should at this point is a testament to the amount of work that they put in, the anticipation and hopes that they get a yes vote. The fact that they're working.
Bidding is what it is all about.
That's what we did.
You know, we did this a long time ago. The amount of time that we put in as a board, like I said, was incredible. A lot of us do have experience in competitive bids, so I want you to be rest assured that the process, that we did do that process already, just happened about 6 to 8 months ago.
I would add that additionally, we've been afforded the opportunity twice over now. I believe it was about a year ago. Members of the administrative team and board members piled on into vans, and we went to the first go. We went to 4 different area schools. We saw Cedarburg, Germantown, Hamilton, Sussex, and Oconomowoc. And most recently, we did the same thing, going up to Madison, so 3 Madison area schools, including Verona, which in terms of student population is a very similar size to our school. And I can tell you that the comments from the administrative team and the board members who were there were very, very in tandem. We are not about building a Taj Mahal. I heard that name thrown about by various people. That is not what we're about. We're not about the bright and shiny objects. We are about doing something that offers our kids the best opportunities. So we were given an opportunity to see these schools. And in fact, while we walked through, we talked to administrators from those schools who said, Truth be told, if I were to do this over again, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I would do something different. So we're learning from them as well and would be able to incorporate into our own design. Where do we cut back? What exactly do we need? What do we want this to look like for our kids? So we're doing all those things as well in terms of really trying to zero in on the type of design and how to bring the best value to not only our students, but our taxpayers.
I have one more question that you indulge me.
Of course.
Ken Fergoda, the question that I have, and I happen to sit on a board. I've been on a board, local university for a number of years, I think over 15 years to be exact. And I'm looking at what you're proposing here or what you're entertaining for facilities. And I have to tell you, the kids that are coming out of this facility are going to have a tremendous letdown when they go to a university that has less than what you're proposing to build here. Is there something that when you're looking at the high school facility race, and you're competing for students from other districts, when we should be concentrating on educating the students right here in this district, number one. And number two, have you looked at any universities to see what their facilities look like? Because again, what you're proposing eclipses what most private universities have in the area, and prestigious private universities at that.
I'd welcome other board members' comments. So what I can tell you is that, in fact, just the opposite is what we've heard from a number of parents. As their kids exit our STEM programs, as their kids end their chem and their bio lab experience at our school and are sent off to college, they're not familiar, in fact, with a lot of the materials that they're currently using at a college level, because we don't supply those things here. Our labs are not set up that way. They're in fact quite antiquated. And so I would argue that in fact, what we have right now makes it difficult. It's a challenge for our students to enter college and be completely up to speed with what the college expectations are. I would welcome any other comments from the board.
In terms of the ask that we have now, I'm asking compared to what you proposed. Because what you're proposing is in fact Taj Mahal. And local universities aren't providing.
I really take issue again with the phraseology of the Taj Mahal. What we are looking at doing, sir, is no different than what we are looking at in any number of the area schools. Having been then to 7 area schools, to understand what their facilities look like, to understand what they're offering to their students, I want no less for our students. I want no less for them. And I think as a case in point for our community, what does our community want? What value does it place on the high school? How proud should it be of this facility versus something that mirrors our communities? Should they not want, in fact, a facility that is similar to the surrounding areas? So I don't know if I'm addressing your question, but I would say that in fact, I personally want the best for our kids. Would you come up and do you mind? I don't think I can stretch that far.
My 2 questions are, if things have gotten to such a deplorable state, why were they allowed to get to a deplorable state? That's number 1. Number 2, since I'm on a fixed income, what is my tax rate going to be?
Thank you.
So the first question, if I can sum this up, is if in fact, our facility is failing and is in such a deplorable state, how is it that we allowed Arrowhead to get that way? And secondarily, for those that are on a fixed income, what will the tax increase be? Jeff, if I might hand this off to you, I think you're best able to address it.
During the budget presentation, I talked about the revenue limits and the revenue controls that we're under through the state law since 1993. That's a lot of the reason we don't have the funding. When we stick our money into the classroom and into the instruction, it doesn't leave enough room to repair the facilities like we want to. The whole funding formula as a whole, if you go back to history and funding education, the dollar amount allowed per student wasn't intended to replace buildings. Buildings are going to age over time. Yes, you want to keep up with the maintenance and that, but when the funding isn't there, you start to make cuts. You try to get those cuts as far away from kids as you can. And so you put your money into the instructional programming and the instruction, and it leaves less to make the repairs and things to be as proactive as one would want to be. And so that's why we're in the situation we are, why the buildings are deteriorated to the point they are. The tax impact is $1.91 per $1,000 of equalized property value for the high school, the new high school building, the $261.2 million. And it's 2 cents, $2 per $1,000 of property value for the increase in the operating referendum to exceed the revenue limits for 4 years.
And I recommend just putting it into an outcome for everyone. If you do $100,000 house, one year, $500,000 house.
Yes.
I know the answer, but
Yep.
your math.
Thank you. Yeah. $2 on $100,000 for the operating referendum, and $191 on a $100,000 house. So multiply by 5, 191 times 5 for a $500,000 home. Yeah, thank you. I heard someone mentioning the average home. I just looked up the assessed value. So the average assessed value in Arrowhead is 515,000, right in that range. So if you took 500,000 times 191, 191 times 5. Thank you. So just under $1,000 for that 500,000 home.
Thank you.
My name is Jeff Renikovich. I just have I have a comment and a question. My comment kind of would address your first question. And my comment is, I was back in 2011, I was a member of the facilities task force that they did back then. And we pretty much went through the whole school. The issues that came up are exactly what you're dealing with today. They didn't do anything. And the board over the last, 10 years up until a few years ago, from 2011 until about 2 or 3 years ago, the board didn't do anything. They didn't spend that money properly. They had these grandiose ideas, a $40 million standalone fine arts center they wanted, and a $5 million baseball field across the street on the other side of Highway E. I mean, they had all these grandiose plans that they wanted for Arrowhead, and they were not going to spend the money wisely. The public turned those referendums down. They told them no. They said, that's not what we want. Utilize the money and revamp the school, modernize the school, expand. On that task force, a lot of the ideas that came up from that were to expand, like the Fine Arts Center, expand it, add on. You don't need a $40 million, standalone facility. And all this stuff was, it wasn't done properly. And for years, the board then, ruined, the school as to what you have today. And you people on the board today are dealing with their negligence. That's what it is. Okay. My question is though, if that fails, okay, what is your plan for doing the, ongoing maintenance and upkeep and the renovations that need to be done over the next few years then?
From my perspective, I want to thank you for giving kind of a historical perspective. From my perspective, should the referendum not pass, the board as a whole will have decisions to make. Do we go to referendum again in April? Do we wait? What do we do? Understand that if the referendum itself does not pass, at a minimum, if we retain two campuses that have an absolutely failing pool, an auditorium that's completely undersized, two facilities that are by any stretch unsafe with hundreds of kids walking back and forth all day. If we are just to maintain what we have been told that over the course of 25 years, there'll be a price tag of $143 million that will be needed to maintain those two facilities. That's roofing, plumbing, windows, HVACs, just to maintain. No improvements, just to maintain. And so rest assured, we don't have that money as a school. We will be going to referendum at some point, at a bare minimum, to ask for that option, because that's the only option that will be presented to us. It's just to maintain what we have. Arguably, why I voted in favor of the referendum that is going to be on the November ballot is because I don't think that's efficient use of taxpayer dollar. In my opinion, to put good money over bad into failing facilities that at the end of 25 years will bring us close to 100-year-old buildings, it's not an option. But I guess that answers your question. We will be going to referendum for something. Any other board members want to chime in?
I'll just chime in. We haven't discussed as a board what the next steps are, only because, we haven't as a board discussed what the potential next steps are, only because we didn't want to task the administration with alternative options when they're entirely focused over the next month. But they've been focused on this for the last 3 months on the outreach that we have for the current referendum. So as a board, we have not discussed it, so it's hard for us to say what's next in terms of a backup plan if it doesn't go good.
Thank you. My name is Ed Schluck. I live on Lake Kesis. I've been a member of the Arrowhead School District living out there for the past 35 years. I was a high school teacher and counselor for 32 years, 30 of those years in Menominee Falls. I guess I'm supposed to have a question up here before I can make any comments, so I do want to ask this question. When that questionnaire came out, I frankly was a little confused, and I voted for more than one of the three options. And now as I look at these figures, 40-some% in all three categories comes up to more than 100%. So I guess I just want to ask again, what is something about the weighting and so on? How do we come up with more than 100%? Or apparently a lot of people voted for more than one thing, as I did. Is that right?
Wasn't an either or.
No.
Pardon?
Was not an either or question. You could support all three. You could support one. You could support two.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Well, I
filled it out the right way.
I deduced that, but I don't think it was really clear that you could vote for more than one. It looked like at first glance like you should just pick one or the other of the three. But I did not do that. I obviously voted for, I did not vote for option 3. Let me make some quick comments here. I obviously, at my age, don't have any don't have any kids going to high school anymore. Back when I did in the Menominee Falls School District, a lot of the freight, if you will, was being paid for by people who were older than me. And so today I think it's only fair that somebody my age should be paying the freight for those younger than me. I want to just use a quick analogy here about this third option where you're talking about, first of all, let me say, I worked in a situation where we had two buildings and kids crossed back and forth all hours of the day from one building to the other. And it was terrible. It was terrible, especially in the wintertime. And that was long before you had the shootings and so on that you have going on today. I just can't imagine having these kids travel a quarter or 3/4 of a mile, whatever it is, between buildings, and you can't even see them from one building or the other. The safety factor ought to be number one here. I mean, can you put a dollar value on the safety of your kids? I really don't think so. But I want to just paint a quick analogy here about state of repairing the old schools and keeping them running. I had an automobile that was 16 years old, a vehicle that I hit a deer with here last fall. And I had an option of getting it fixed or taking an insurance settlement and getting a newer vehicle. Foolishly, I went for getting it fixed. And it certainly cost me in the end because well, I looked at it this way. I had put $7 grand into repairs in the past 5 years and figured it wasn't worth it. I ought to keep that vehicle. So I put some more repairs into it. The upshot of it is I had to get rid of it for far less than the repairs cost me. It was a losing proposition. After a while, things wear out, and you just can't keep putting Band-Aids on top of one of another. And I think with buildings, that's what you run into. And especially when you've got 5 air conditioning units, as they said, going out here within the last year. I just put a new air conditioner into one of my buildings. The price keeps going up and up and up. It cost me about twice what the last air conditioning unit cost. I'm just going to say here in conclusion, be sensible, think ahead. And yes, your taxes are going to go up. My taxes are going to go up. My home is worth more than the average one you're talking about here. But just remember this, when the time comes for you to get rid of that residence or your children, you're going to be rewarded many times over for the tax increase that's going up right now. I tell you, I have friends of mine from other communities, including Menominee Falls, who ask me about my tax bill out here. And when I tell them what it is, they can't believe it. They said, "Are you kidding? You're living on a lake. You're in the Arrowhead School District, and that's all your taxes are?" Seriously, that's what they tell me. Yeah, your taxes are going to go up, but it's an investment in education, and it needs to happen. Thank you.
My name is Alex Mearson. I have a similar perspective as you had mentioned. This building is 70 years old, and when I did calculations for the impact that my tax property bill is, paying 145 million for maintenance versus the 261 for a new school, the difference was only a few $100s. So from my perspective, a new school is much more worth than investing in an old school that will be 100 years old. But likewise, like people said, but another part that really is important to me, I'm newer to the community. My wife grew up here. She went to high school here. What I'm so impressed about this community is that so many people have come back here. Kids that went to high school here, they're now in their forties or fifties and they moved back in this community. That says a lot. And I think that if we invest in a new school, your grandchildren will move in this, back into this community. If you invest in it, that's great. We will keep our kids coming back here, and I would like to see that as another point to it. And as a point of like cutting costs and cutting this and cutting that, you know what? Yes, you want to be smart with your money. You want to be smart with your investment, but you have to look into the future. This school has been here 70 years. So if we cheap out on things, 30 years from now, we're going to say, well, why didn't we build it, right at that time, So yes, you want to be smart, but you don't want to cut corners and build a school that you wish you would have done something better. So this is the opportunity for another $100, $200 a month more that you're going to pay a year. You're better off in getting everything you want today so that it's going to be around and effective the next 70 years from now as well. And just back on our property taxes, I'm shocked at I'm paying less in property taxes today here than my house was paying 15 years ago. Our taxes are way down, which is great. I'm not complaining about that. I want all of our taxes to go down. So if mine goes up an extra $1,000 a year, I'm still way ahead of where I was paying 15 years ago in taxes. So think about the investment. It's a good opportunity for the next 70 years.
I'm gonna give you a couple of questions. I'm gonna give my business card to Jeff here. Jeff, I want you to write this down because these are the numbers I want to get from you in the coming days. I want the total cost with financing of what this 261.2 million is going to be. I want to know if this referendum would be successful. When the switch gets turned off, how many years is that? Is that 30 years, 40 years? When does the money stop for the tax increase used to fund this project?
20 years, 20-year borrow.
And then our taxes go back down after 20 years?
Assuming there's no other facility maintenance or needs.
Well, here's what I see. The young lady here mentioned 143 point whatever million for 25 years, did you say?
Correct.
What's the cost to restore both of these buildings to 100% functional condition today or next year? Did we get that number? Did anybody drive up that number based on the facility evaluation?
We've got the 143 million.
For 25 years of maintenance and repair going forward, what's the number to restore everything to 110% today?
$53 million to put everything operational for the next 10 years.
So replace all the bad RTUs, fix the pool, everything that's on the bad list.
It takes $53 million in the next 10 years to replace the things that were behind us.
Does that include the pool?
It does not include the pool.
Does it include repair for the pool?
It does repair the summer pool.
53 million.
Correct.
And that number went away in the advent of these three surveys.
That would be in the next 10 years. And then over the next 25 years, that would turn into a total of 143.
So another 90 million.
Correct.
And where did those numbers come from? How did we get there?
BJS did our estimating. We put in, we would replace floors, we would paint walls, we would replace carpets every 25 years. Some of those basic.
So let's just assume for 1 minute that we spend 261 million, get this beautiful new building. What happens in 20 years?
Be a darn nice facility yet.
We're going to be back to another big ask, aren't we?
I would.
The chillers are going to fail, the RTUs are going to fail, the flooring is going to be needing replacement, lots of paint, lots of acoustical tile. So we're going to come back again for another 50, aren't we?
I don't know about that. And I wouldn't recommend doing rooftop units like was done on these facilities.
Well, whatever the new design is, whatever that heating and cooling system is, hopefully it won't be solar.
Air handlers last for 50 plus years. We don't have air handlers in this facility. It was built with rooftop units.
You still got to heat the air going through the air handler. You still got to cool the air.
So you're going to put in a boiler plant. You're going to put in a chiller.
Yeah, and the maintenance on those is 20 times an RTU.
Are there any other questions?
Ashley Brockman and in the district. I was just curious if Arrowhead had the opportunity to apply for any grants or private fundraising to help with the cost.
Did everyone hear her question? She asked if Arrowhead has applied for grants or done any other type of fundraising to cover some of the costs.
We have not applied for any grants. We do have some fundraising groups out there doing small things. We've got a tennis group working on fundraising for upgrading tennis facilities. Pool group tried. They haven't raised a whole lot of money. I haven't seen anything there. I do have a little bit that I've set aside from the tennis group for them. As far as grants go, in our community, there's a lot of grants that we don't qualify for. You need to have free and reduced percentages in the 40 to 50% of your student base being on free or reduced meals to be able to even qualify for a lot of those grants. If we get into a project, we will definitely be looking into grants for energy efficiency to try to operate a new facility in the most energy efficient way. So I know there is grants out there. I've already attended a session on trying to figure out what's the best way to go. But I'll be working with the architects and engineers and figuring out if that makes sense. Is that a high value, and if a grant can pay for something that's going to be cost efficient down the way, it's an expensive investment up front, but if a grant can help offset that expensive investment and bring it to the cost of a normal system, a less efficient system, then we're going to look into that. So I've been looking already, but again, we're not going to invest a ton of time until we know if we have a project or not.
You want to go? Yeah, okay. First of all the board members, Superintendent Varner, Jeff, thank you for all the work you've done. I loved your presentation. I'm an engineer by background, lots of numbers, graphs, and things. So a simple question I had is, just glancing at the budget, doing a little bit of nasty math, about 2/3 of the budget that we have is compensation and benefits, give or take, right? 1/3 of it is for everything else, including maintenance. So when we look at any new facility, whether it's 261, 214, 172, on day one, how is that budget going to change to now be able to adequately maintain this new facility? Yes, it'll probably cost initially less than this, right? But, the question is it adequate? And then what should the community be expecting for that? Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks for your questions. So there's a Fund 46, it's called, for capital maintenance, capital improvements in the future. If we have a new facility that isn't going to cost us a lot to maintain to start out, we know it's going to cost us at the end. And I would suggest putting dollars away into that Fund 46 over the years so we're prepared for when we have to start repairing things. We're already putting money into that. We've got a balance of $4 million in that fund today that we can either choose to use toward a project like this. It will help us if this project, if this referendum fails, to take care of some of the issues that we absolutely have to take care of. We hope to not have to invest in these facilities, and we're being real careful about what we're investing at this time. Just in case, this were to pass, we don't want to be throwing good money at a system that may go away. So we're being real careful on what we do with it, but my recommendation would be, start pumping money into Fund 46 for the future.
Come on down.
Can you hear me? Good evening, because when everybody introduced themselves at the start in the back, you couldn't hear any of your names or any of your comments. Probably not 75% of it. The question about the breakdown on what I'm going to call the Palace Pool, as a 30-year swimmer and a nationally ranked swimmer, and I'm not from Arrowhead, I'm from 8 miles west, was And frankly, I was a bit surprised that nobody was prepared with these numbers. A base new school, 214.5 million. The new Palace pool, which I'm for, but I don't know about the other stuff, 22.6 million versus just a basic pool at 9.9 million. And the new auditorium of 24.1 million to come up with the 261.2. And I think that guest has left, but if this is on the record, they can reference back to it from the survey. Starting with some of my comments, would like to get a clear and final total expenditure per student from the district. You have two different groups of stats out there. One I got today was $15,012 per student. And I'm guessing that's the total student count, including open enroll in, or what I call out of district students. No, it's not. And one moment, please. The second is what you reported to NCES, which is the National Center for Educated Statistics at 14,257 per student. Mr. Gross.
Yes, there's so many ways to do cost per student. There's total educational.
Not cost.
You have some cost or
Total expenditure per student. There's a difference between cost versus expenditure.
Okay, we'll call it total expenditure. The $15,012 is the total district expenditure per student. So it's dividing total spend by 1975 as the denominator, which is our state aid count. So it's resident students only. Does not include the open enrollment students. If you were to factor in the open enrollment, the 278 open enrollment students, your denominator would go up.
When, may I ask, is your out of district open enroll in student count? Because I was given a higher number just a couple of days ago, and it's surprising to me that you keep allowing a higher and higher amount of open enrollment in students when it's kind of like a business that's looking at their books and saying, hey, we've got too much money going out, but you keep bringing in new customers that are costing you more money than an in-district student. And it goes up every year. It was just added on June 14th, approved by the board to add extra numbers to the already open enrollment count. And that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. So we get $8,962 per open enrollment student that comes in. We pay that same amount.
State funding.
No, not state funding. It's a transfer of funding from the other district.
Okay.
So when our 89 students that go out, we transfer our state aid. They pass it through on aid, but it's our revenue limit dollars that are getting passed through. So we give $89.62 per student going out to the other district, and they give us $89.62 per student coming in. When you have facilities that, our student base will not fit in one facility, and they won't fit in one facility in 5 years. They won't fit in one facility in 3 years at our low enrollment expected, about 1,800 kids. We can't fit 1,800 kids into one facility. Even if we're just talking resident students only, take all the open enrollment out of it.
You're under 1760 right now for in-district students, and it's going down.
No, that's true. That's not true.
That's the number I was given by your coworker a day or two ago. Yes.
Just under 67. Yep. Those are resident students. So that includes the kids that are sitting in the seats, subtract out the kids that are in here from another district, and we add back in the 89 that are not here, but attending other districts. Okay. So we're at 1758 is the number. So let's say that goes down another 100 kids. You're at 1658, or even 200 kids. We're at 1560 or 50. They're not going to fit into one building. So when you have space in your buildings, you're paying to operate the buildings anyway because you have space. When you have space available, if you can fill that in with an open enrollment student, even if it costs you a teacher, you're already paying for the facility. That's a major cost. So now you can buy, I put these numbers together actually. 16 kids, I'm sorry, it was the 300 open enrollment students in. I'm rounding up like one of our community members. And that was going to take an additional, or we could have cut 16 teachers according to the math that it was providing.
And so, how many administrators too? If you're cutting 16 teachers, you can cut an administrator.
We still have a facility building to run, so let's just go teachers for now. So you're talking at about $100,000 a piece, let's see, $1.6 million. Grab my numbers here. Just put that together.
1.6 million, 116 teachers at 100,000 a pop.
1.6 million, but we're bringing in like 2.8 million worth of revenue through open enrollment to pay for those teachers plus have a profit. We netted out, when I did the math, almost $1 million in net revenue to help offset the budget deficit that is created through the revenue limits.
Can you post that on the Arrowhead website?
Absolutely.
And the stats and the breakdown, because it sounds actually the other direction.
It does sound that way. I get that, but when you're in the weeds on this stuff, it makes financial sense.
One other way to explain it perhaps is, are you familiar with leveraging your fixed cost?
Yes.
It's a very similar scenario. You have your fixed cost and you're bringing in more students. Your costs don't necessarily go up by the same amount of your fixed costs. You're leveraging that revenue to take advantage of a profit.
Next topic, in regards to the repairs versus replacement all new, there is one chart you provided in February of this year from the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee updates, as Mr. Gross just shortly mentioned ago, almost 53 million for a 10-year capital maintenance plan versus what was brought up in the survey. That 53 million was not brought up in the survey, with the three options at 142, approximately 153 and 172 for either renovate, light rebuild, heavy rebuild, but it was not offered to the public at the projected interest rate what that amount would be, nor was it offered in the survey with the projected interest rate. And I'm guessing this interest rate could have been anywhere from a year ago to early spring this year, 4.25%, which is almost impossible to get now, which on a tangent brings up, I don't think you can guarantee the 261 million to go out for bonding and fund loans at 4.25%. I think that 261 is going to be higher if you're including the interest, which we would also like to know what previous or current entities you're speaking to fund these bonds. It should have been much more transparent and complete what was offered in the survey, and before going that far, even perhaps a year ago, to soliciting bids from VJS and so on and so forth, and it was not clear whatsoever.
How many meetings did you attend before tonight?
This is my first one.
Okay. So we've had meetings going back. We started this process. Was it a year ago from August? We started the process and started talking about it. Got our architects, engineering on board. There's been a lot of work that's put into this so far. I'm not sure I understand your question, but
tell me what you're confused about.
Give it to me. And what's your question?
Please present to the public, whether it's on Facebook or Arrowhead website, the amount of 53 million on your 10-year capital maintenance plus your projected interest, as well as what those amounts would have been had they chosen or had the board gone to just light rebuild, heavy rebuild, or renovation. Instead, all we got was the total amount for new building with interest to the 261. We don't have apples and oranges to compare.
I just want to make sure I have a question like someone else does. So you want to know what the 53 million over the next 10 years has inflationary costs built into that number.
As well as there was the other amount listed of the 143 million, but it was my understanding that in today's dollars, that's only 86 million. That all needs to be transparent and broken down on the website.
It's been clear in all the meetings and all the.
Is it on a website?
In fact, all of our, thank you so much.
All of our board recordings, as well as I believe a lot of our forums that began with rolling out the facility assessment data that then led to some of the long-term planning, which included all of the cost estimates, all of the data points that were provided to the board. That stuff started rolling out at board meetings and in different forums, workshops, I believe last October. I mean, it's been a long time coming. October, November, we started receiving some of that. Always open to the public. And so we even got into presentations that BJS did with individual costs. So things were very much broken down for any attendee, anyone tuning into our recordings. It's in fact been quite transparent.
Could I get your name so I can get back to you on that?
Oh, I left you a voicemail and I haven't heard back.
Oh, got it. This morning you left me a voicemail.
Correct.
Okay.
Could I
Yeah.
get your name just for my?
It's a busy day.
Madam President,
Yes.
may I please make a motion for
Sorry, what's that?
Do you have any further questions?
One last one.
Oh, good.
Yes. This was an article published October 7th by the MacGyver Institute. I have hard copy. If somebody wants, give me your email and I'll email it to you. Chances are your school district doesn't have a budget. And it shows that the only one in the state so far that actually does, not an overview, not a summary, is MPS. And we saw what happened even though they had one with a complete breakdown. The next closest one is Superior. We do not have a complete breakdown. They have charts in here from Monona Grove that thought they had a balanced budget, found out they did not. Evansville, 2 from MPS, and then a sample I included of what is Arrowhead's budget. If we expect previous boards or our current boards to have complete information, they don't, and then they can't make the best decision to bring forward to the public to look at. This is a wonderful example of what an exact budget should be, and I have not seen anything close to it anywhere for Arrowhead, and I would really welcome that to be brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break. We'll reconvene at, time is it? In 10 minutes. 8:50. Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming.
It's the next. And now I probably should have. Yeah, now I think I could get it. Yes. Well, I mean, I just.
We still on hold. This is perfect.
Fine job. We're not even done yet.
Still on old business, I believe. That's not at the agenda.
We are.
Hopefully we still gotta vote on your salaries and. is the
But I was
levy-
going to propose 10 grand a piece and maybe I don't think the audience will vote for that.
Yeah, convening?
Yes.
Yeah, we have to keep going. Rolling over, yeah. Thank you.
The time frame.
All this technology has been.
So we have 1 minute.
Okay. Let's get the board back. Okay. Okay, I'd ask for the board members to return. We'll reconvene. I asked for questions from the audience, but our audience seems to have dwindled substantially. Okay. So it appears that we have completed old business. Moving on to agenda number 8, new business. We need to take a look at and approve school board members' salaries. At the present time, annual salaries are established at $3,400 per board member. I'm looking for a motion to approve the salaries of the school board members at $3,400 for the 24-25 school year.
This is your meeting.
I'll move to maintain our salaries at the same level as last.
Thank you, Member
I
Meyer.
will second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next up is discussion around approving the recommended tax levy. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve the recommended tax levy in the amount of $18,342,345 for the ensuing school year.
I'll make that. I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Other new business. Do board members or anyone out there have other new business? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.